Throughout the various meetings I attend dealing with the Everglades, there's constantly a resounding cry for restoring the Everglades to its natural state. We've put millions of dollars into restoring the historic water flow. And in its natural state, the water in the Everglades would have never been held and stored north of 41 for 9 months out of the year. Historically, if a species required dry nesting areas, it wouldn't set up camp in the southern Everglades, which receives a wet season almost half the year.
To how we can do everything possible with the Cape Sable sparrow, but not alter the natural sheet flow or alter the environment. For one, we have to realize that if we have 70 endangered species, if you want to take care of the wildlife into the future, all we have to do is manage the environment properly, and the wildlife will take care of themselves. I think we should follow up on compatible water levels with the environment, the ecology, all our wildlife, all our endangered species, and all of our plant communities to make sure we're all on the same page. And at the end of the day, we have to stay focused on the total global Everglades with shared adversity and shared impact.
Work really hard to correct those problems that we're having and to address not only the water flow, but the water levels and the right amount of water and sending that water at the right times of the years, because we're impacting multiple species. Not only that project, but also the other projects that are going on under the name of restoration, which are going to bring influx of high level of waters into areas that are going to impact the mammal species in those areas that are predominantly historically dry during the wet season. That includes the Adlands,
Sable, Seaside, Sparrow. I think we need to take greater consideration of the damage caused to our water conservation areas and the water quality issues we experience upstream by holding water back. I think we need to send the water south for the benefit of all species that depend on this watershed. I know this year, particularly the wood storks did not do well during their nesting season, and I wonder how much of that could have been avoided by allowing more water to flow south. So today I'm asking the Commission to discuss these impacts with our governor and ask that he requests we take a harder look at these closures with our federal agencies. Thank you.
Mismanaged for almost 30 years to the detriment of the Miccosukee tribe and numerous other species of animals in Everglades National Park and Big Cypress. It is proven the current method of management is not working for the sparrows. I encourage the board to seek changes from Governor Ron DeSantis to eliminate the closure of S12 gates along Tamiami Trail during the nesting season. The Miccosukee tribe should be thanked for their patience, and changes must be made regarding the closure of those gates to ensure the future populations of the many species of fish, birds, and animals within the park and Big Cypress. Until restoration projects are completed, we must not allow the tribe's way of life and the future of all species within Everglades National Park and Big Cypress to be jeopardized.
To the rest of the Everglades. After a high water event, the skeletal remains of various types of animals can be found on all the high ground areas. These high water events are directly caused by single species management of the sparrow. Most of the large trees in Area 3 have fallen due to erosion around the roots caused by the high water. We need you guys, the Commission, to ask the Governor to make a formal request of the Council on Environmental Quality to review the position on the sparrow and associated structure closures of the S12s, the 343, the 344, the S199, and the S200. And I would also just like to thank you guys for letting me comment.
To reevaluate their Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow Management Plan that is decimating glades and all the species in it, and to manage for the entire
Management
is killing the Everglades. As a recent meeting that Commissioner Bergeron was at, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife admitted that the one little pod of nesting seaside sparrows was basically there was only one left. It hasn't worked for 20 years that they've gained population. All they've done is lose population. I think that the governor needs to go to the Council of Environmental Equality and request that they review this. It's just a shame that over the years that this high water is killing everything for the benefit of a sparrow that's not even recovering. They do move over the 50 or so years that they've studied them. Their nests have moved in the past because of fires, because of high water. A few years ago, when we had a high water event, Commissioner Bergeron at the time got the South Florida Water Management to pump water over the L-29, pumped billions of gallons of water into that area. The area within a few months came back like it should have come back 50 years ago. So it can be done. It's just a shame that our seagrasses are dying out in Florida Bay because they're not getting enough fresh water because of one little sparrow that is not recovering at this time. Thank you.
A little bit too. On the first day I was sworn in as a member of the governing board and elected chairman of that body in 1999, I was informed a whole bunch of my old friends from the Governor's Commission were sitting upstairs waiting to meet with me. That included U.S. Fish and Wildlife and the Army Corps of Engineers. And what they rolled out in front of me that day was the management plan they had decided on to deal with the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow biological opinion and jeopardy opinion. And my concern that day is the one that, basically has come to pass, was that they would devastate Florida Bay. For 6 to 8 months out of the year, under the management plan currently in place, you can't put water into Taylor Slough. There isn't much we can do for Taylor Slough. Building reservoirs upstream is nice, but it's not going to do anything. Putting water in Taylor Slough will help Florida Bay. And for the last 20 years, including the 11 years I sat on that board, myself and a whole bunch of other people have repeatedly requested that Fish and Wildlife take up a review of the negative impacts of the current management regime for the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow. And for 20 years, they have refused to do so. Absolutely, without apology, we're not going to do it. So I would request that this commission take up a formal review of the impacts of that management regime, consider passing that on to the governor and asking him to pass it on to CEQ, which I believe is an appropriate place to put it. And hopefully that just good government comes to pass on the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow. Again, thank you, folks, and I hope you all keep well.
We've faced for quite some time. I echo my other concerned users of the Everglades comments thus far. I am a sixth-generation Gladesman. My family has been in the Everglades since the late 1800s, and I've seen firsthand the detrimental effects that we've incurred as a result of single-species management. For the first time in decades, we have a foothold, as I would call it, with Everglades rehabilitation, with all the projects going on. We all know on the phone that with the implementation of these upcoming projects, we're going to see a great deal more water moving south. But if we can't even keep the S-12 structures open at 100% for up to 9 months out of the year, what do we think is going to happen when we get the opportunity to convey 10,000, 15,000, or even 18,000 cubic feet per second south? It's not going to happen. In fact, Larry Williams from U.S. Fish and Wildlife has said even when Mod Waters is complete, we're still going to see structures such as the S-12, and there's several other structures, as you know, that are impacted. They're going to remain closed for up to 9 months out of the year. This isn't going to work for us. You know that, I know that. Anybody involved in restoration at any of the agencies that have anything to do with the Everglades restoration projects are echoing the same concerns. So I urge you to please go to the governor and support a review with the CEQ on management of the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow and its habitat. Thanks again for your time.
Of the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow issue. There's so many things that have been said by my fellow sportsmen and women ahead of me, and of course we stand with the Miccosukee tribe as well on this issue. I don't need to repeat all of the reasons, but I want to bring you another one. not only do we need to make sure that we remove this one roadblock, if you will, out of many constraints to sending water south, before we can get more water south, once we implement things like mod waters, but the public needs a win. You know, it's really hard to keep people energized when we talk about restoring the Everglades, when every time we get a chance to finally solve one of these small problems, you know, even if it's just 10% of the problem of sending water south, then we run into roadblocks that are, quite frankly, probably more political than they are science. And I say that because all you have to do is look at the fact that subpopulation A has not recovered. We've been managing this water this way for that subpopulation of the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow for all these years at the detriment of everything else, and we're not seeing results. That's not following science. That's something else. The public needs a win. Sportsmen need a win. We need to show people that we can actually accomplish the goals that we're setting out. And the only way we're going to do that is if we slowly but surely remove all of these constraints to sending water south. So I just ask you to do what you can to support this effort. I think that if the governor were to step up with this and ask for that review on the Council of Environmental Quality, you would see a lot of support just in the general population for that.
Because the Fish and Wildlife Service for a quarter of a century now has recommended what they call reasonable and prudent alternatives. That includes closing the S12A and B gates. That causes discriminatory water management, and it floods hundreds and thousands of acres in tribal and state Everglades in Water Conservation Area 3A. Those areas are vital to the culture and way of life of the Miccosukee tribe. The closure of those water control structures for 6 months out of every year is causing high water levels, and that poses a health and safety risk to the Miccosukee community. It degrades the tree islands. It has also brought snail kite and the wood stork, both of those are endangered as well, to the verge of extinction. And about 915 square miles of the Water Conservation Area 3A has been severely degraded because of the Fish and Wildlife Service. Now, we know that you can't make Fish and Wildlife Service listen to reason, and we have tried, and it hasn't worked. And Department of the Interior is refusing to make Fish and Wildlife Service listen to reason. That is the reason we've asked CEQ to become involved, and we would urge you to ask the governor to please have CEQ get involved in this issue. It has gone on long enough. When we keep those gates closed, not only do upstream areas suffer, when you can't discharge water into the conservation areas because they're flooded, you have to blow out the east and the west coast estuaries. So the folks on the coast are suffering. And all the way down to Florida Bay, there's not enough water getting through because the gates are closed, so you have hypersalinity going on in Florida Bay. This is affecting all of South.
A lot of devastation has happened because we, I think, have kind of pushed the bounds of what the Endangered Species Act was meant to do, which was to make sure that the balance of ecosystems was kept intact and that critically endangered species were protected the way that they should be. And I think at this juncture right now, unfortunately, and with the way we are handling things with the Cape Seaside Sparrow, it's negatively affecting the ecosystem as a whole. And with this mindset and this approach to managing the land, I think we're ending up with an ecosystem that has less flora and fauna that we're looking for, less recreational opportunities for sportsmen and women, and even bird watchers, hikers, things of that nature, because we're keeping artificially high levels of water in the southern glades where it doesn't need to be kept and where it needs to flow further south. And I think it just ends up ultimately being a roadblock to the mission that FWC has at hand, which is managing our resources for generations in 2060, 2070, 3000, right? And so for me, when I look through and I see kind of the efforts that we have at hand here, I just really hope that we take into consideration a way that we can balance both of these, right? That we can try to find solutions that allow us to still send it down south, that allows us to, still protect the species in the way that needs to be protected. But maybe there's, I know we do like wood duck foxes. Listen, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist. I'm just a stakeholder that sees the negative impact of what's happening. And we've got some of the brightest minds in America that work here in Florida. I'm sure that we can figure out a way to have a solution that fits all parties, and it doesn't, just lead to the detriment of everything that we have at hand and everything that's at risk, right? Like we're talking about EAA, we're talking about all these different things that we're doing to try to support the Everglades, but all that's for naught if we can't actually restore the flow, which I hear about all the time. I hear that agricultural gets pulled out to that. But really, at the end of the day, we have this little bird, which I love and value. I think that it has value in the state ecosystem. But I think that it's just dictating and it's driving too much, unfortunately, of the conversation and unfortunately of the management of the glades. And I really
put into the Everglades. Captive breeding of the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow and management of that flock is essential until the water issues are solved that surf is going to create. You have not seen water problems yet from all the water that's going back into the system. That's only 50% of what it used to be. So I'm going to encourage you to get with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do captive breeding and flock management. We lost the dusky seaside sparrow because U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service refused to do captive breeding soon enough, and when they decided to, there were only 3 males left. If you wait much longer, there's only going to be 3 males left of the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow. You can solve the whole problem by doing captive breeding, but please have the governor approach CEQ.
I've worked on trying to reestablish our old access the Park Service took away from us back in 2001, so I had to deal with Fish and Wildlife Service to ground truth trails and figure out how to do trails where we wouldn't interfere with sparrows. But we found over the last 20 years since 2001, the one area I was confined to working in, at the peak we had 13 nesting sites. Within 7 years we had 0 birds nesting in that area. Part of the reason for the loss of nesting in that area is the water management, because while they're artificially drying it out during the nesting season, it allowed taller growth to grow. So after about 5 or 6 years of this drying down, taller plants grew where with the sites where we were trying to avoid with our airboats on the trails. So there's a lot to this water management thing, and also during that time, about 2006 and 2007, the Department of Interior knew that there was a problem, and it was subpopulation area. It was removed with the consideration as critical habitat for subpopulation was supposed to be taken care of, and that was entered into the Federal Registry around 2006 and 2007. Yet for the last 13 or so more years, the Department of Interior or the other agencies continue to manage it as though it was critical habitat. So it's further.
I've witnessed a lot of environmental destruction from the long-term high water conditions, and I'd just like to ask FWC to request Governor DeSantis to make a formal request to the CEQ to review the position on the sparrow and associated structure closure. Thank you.
Comments to the Water Management District and to the FWC about the Cape Sable Seaside Sparrow. I got a very nasty write-up from Dr. Pym after my comments in 2003. Dr. Pym's a wonderful guy. He loves the creatures. But the fact of the matter is, I've watched this bird destroy the Everglades. And the WCAs are just as much a part of the Everglades as Everglades National Park. I've watched this bird destroy the lake. I've watched this bird destroy the Caloosahatchee, and I've watched this bird destroy the St. Lucie, where I'm standing right now in Stewart. And I can tell you, as long as that water is not allowed to flow south naturally, as Mr. Bergeron has said 1,000 times, the Everglades will never be restored, and we will be continuing to destroy hundreds and hundreds of thousands of acres of good land, good marsh, and God knows how many.
Sparrow in the CEQ review. We know that you guys are appointed positions, and hopefully you can use some of that political influence to push back on that with the governor and just ask for a review of it. I don't understand the complexity as well as some of the folks in South Florida do, but I definitely would like to see that examined more in depth.
I'm not going to get too much into it. I mean, y'all have heard it over and over again.
basically, as a result of that single species management of the sparrow, the Everglades north of Tamiami Trail holding too much water, it's drowning out the tree islands, the deer, the small game animals, and all the other native flora and fauna of the Everglades. So I just urge you all to have this important discussion with the governor and especially the other agencies involved in Everglades restoration to address this problem, and to ask the governor to petition the Council for Environmental Quality to review the problem before the effects of this mismanagement are irreversible.
Experience on the subject of water and wildlife oversight that these people bring to the table. I'm the chairman of the South Atlantic Dolphin Wahoo Advisory Council, and in that arena I donate endless time. These people have donated just endless amounts of their life to bring these attentions to the table, and I hope you recognize and appreciate the really pure love they have for the outdoors and for the Everglades. My father built our camp in the Big Cypress before I was born in 1962, and in those years since then I've personally witnessed what was once a plentiful population of bobwhite quail, armadillos, cottontail rabbits, swamp rabbits gone. Not to say they can't be replenished, but in the current state of affairs, they will not live. And when I was a kid in Flamingo, snake bite was full of seagrass. Today, it's a mud flat. So these are serious, serious problems that I've seen with my own eyes. And I just would really appreciate it if you guys would do your best to try to get the governor to act on the CEQ and try to realize the huge volume of plants and animals that have been negatively affected by the concern of this one species. So thank you.
Sparrow. I can tell you that I am a camp owner out in Big Cypress. I've been going out to Big Cypress since 1978, and unfortunately, I have personally witnessed essentially the decimation of just about all out there. With that being said, we turn it formal to the governor, so that the governor may have a meeting with the Council on Environmental Quality to please review the position on the Seaside Sparrow and the associated structure closure, especially at S12, 343, 344, 199, and 200, that is impacting the returning of the normal, or as normal as possible today, water flow to the south. Thank you very much, and everyone stay safe, and I appreciate you putting this meeting together for all of us. Thank you.